Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. I'm your host, Calvin Timms. I've got my co-host, Dale, with me here today. You can find us over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin or at Dynasty_Dale. How's it going, Dale? It's been a couple weeks. I did actually have a work retreat that I had to go to last week and didn't have a chance to get a podcast recorded before I left. So there was no week 11. We're going to touch on that in the recap here in a little bit, but we are back for week number 12. Dale, how's it going?
It is going pretty good today. I am not excited about talking about our week 10 starts of the week, but
yeah, I know why.
Hopefully we can touch on some things that are a little bit better.
Yeah, so today we are going to go through the recap of the week 10 starts of the week, just touch on, brag on them a little bit. Then we're going to give a couple guys that we like for this holiday weekend. Hope you guys are ready for Turkey Day tomorrow. Should be a good one. Lots of football. I always love football on Thanksgiving, but it's annoying.
Absolutely.
So just a real quick rant for my house is I live in the middle of the country now, and I'm right on the edge of town, but I don't want to pay for cable and all that crap, right? So I have an antenna for my TV, and on my downstairs TV, I get NBC and I get CBS, and I get all the internet stuff like Prime and Disney and plugs, whatever you want to say. We have basically all of them, right? But which is basically cable. But I don't get Fox. That's the only channel I don't get on my downstairs TV. In my bedroom TV, I get Fox. In the bedroom TV, I get all the channels.
Great.
But downstairs, I don't get Fox. I'm like, it's like 20 feet, man. It's 20 feet literally above and below each other. I'm just like,
makes the difference.
Oh my goodness, man. It's so annoying because I'm just like, I want to watch all these Fox games all the time, and it's like, well, can't. So just can't. So that's fun. But no, it should be a good week of football, and I'm excited for it. So, like Dale said, recapping the week 10 starts of the week, and it was a good one for me. Caught up, going into week number 9. Dale had a massive lead. He went 3-0 on me that week. He was perfect in week number 9. I was terrible. And this week it reversed. It's just crazy how quickly, these stud players can just go from 0 to hero on you, but it is what it is. So just to recap my week 10 players, I had James Conner, Dalton Schultz, and Christian Kirk. So in that week, James Conner finishes the running back number 5 with 23, 24 points, depending on your league settings. Pretty good. This is full PPR, so I don't get that half-point PPR crap out of here. Christian Kirk finished as the wide receiver number 4 on the week. And the best part about this 3-0, and Dalton Schultz, by the way, was my last one, finished as the tight end number 3. Pretty good, solid week, too. 17 points for a tight end is not bad at all. The best part about those starts of the week were not only did I smash you 3-0, but all of them were top 5 on the week. So when I hit well, man. It was a good week for me.
Yeah, you did. Definitely.
Oh, man. Feels so good to be tied up. So hopefully I can keep it rolling here. I took that week off. Maybe
I really hope not.
Might have lost my magic here, but we'll see. So who are your starts on that week? Refresh our memory.
Mine were Amari Cooper. If you started him in week 10, I'm sorry. But if you started him in week 11 against Buffalo, you were loving it. That's the same with Chris Olave. He kind of had a dud week, and then he got back to it with the red rifle, and then lastly I had Boo Boo Smith-Schuster.
Oh man,
he actually
I always feel bad when they get concussions.
Overall for him, he just got hurt really early, and concussion, unfortunately, and hopefully he comes back soon.
He should be back this week. He practiced in full today, so
I would hope so.
Yep, he had a full practice, no limitations today, so we're looking like it's guns up for him this week, and which is very good because the Chiefs wide receiver core is pretty depleted right now. But yeah,
Absolutely.
it is kind of funny. If you go to week 11, Amari Cooper was the wide receiver number 2, and Chris Olave was the wide receiver number 7 on the week. You just missed it by 1 week.
Yep.
So that's how fantasy goes, man. It's just it does not matter. But all right, that said, we're going to roll into our starts of the week for week number 12. And I'll start here with my guys. So I'm actually going to be starting and recommending. Dale hasn't heard these yet, so he's heard he's heard one of them. But I'm keeping them a little bit secret here. But my first start of the week is going to be quarterback Geno Smith going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders have been bleeding points to fantasy quarterbacks the last couple weeks. The only team that couldn't get it done was Russell Wilson, which why? Come on, man. Like, why? You did it earlier in the season. That's the hilarious part. Like, the first time they played each other, you lit them up. But this time, at least Russ wasn't terrible in this one. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't have a ton of bad plays, but it's just, dude, they cannot score touchdowns to save their life in Denver. But, yeah, other than Denver and Russell Wilson, the Raiders have been just bleeding points. And Geno Smith has been very good all year. Had one of his worst games of the year, against Tampa Bay. And by the end of that game, this was a Germany game, right? Germany. By the end of that game, he really got it rolling towards the end. But, man, Geno Smith is just playing on fire. 17 touchdowns, 4 interceptions on the season. He's playing smart with the ball. Not the best yardage, but he's got that rushing floor you love to see. So I really like Geno going up against this Las Vegas team that's bleeding points. My second start of the week is going to be Tyler Conklin. So one of the biggest pieces of news that came out today was that the New York Jets are benching Zach Wilson for Mike White or Joe Flacco. I don't really know if it says it's Mike White, but I don't know why you go Mike White over Joe Flacco, to be honest with you. Flacco looked decent in those games that he started with him early in the season.
Absolutely.
So we'll see how that kind of goes. Mike White, he had a little bit of flash in the pan last year, but I would not be surprised. It's funny, like everyone was so excited for Mike White to come into this game. Last year, he had 5 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. Like, it's not good to have that many interceptions in the 4 games that he started. So, Mike White is very likely to play himself out of a job in this one. And then, are you really going to go back to Zach Wilson, or are you going to go to Joe Flacco? When Conklin was playing with Flacco early in the season, 4 targets, 6 targets, 8 targets. Those are the games with Flacco. Really started to pick it up. He's been a little inconsistent with Zach Wilson, so if Zach starts most of this game, this might be a bad bet. But I'm kind of just hoping that it's going to be Flacco, and the opportunity with the Chicago Bears, it's looking pretty good over there as well. And then my last start of the week is going to be DJ Moore. So another benching, if you did see it. Baker got benched, which, whatever. The Panthers are, dude, this is going to be the most frustrating game probably of the year. The Panthers just cannot get both of these defenses are so good. Denver and Carolina Panthers. The Broncos and the Carolina Panthers have probably 2 top 5 defenses in the league, and they have the most dysfunctional offenses I've ever seen in a football season. It's so disgustingly one-sided for both of these teams. Like, I just do not understand it. So Baker got benched for Sam Darnold. Well, at least Sam Darnold will throw it to DJ Moore. We do know that. So DJ Moore, he's had a few good weeks this year, but him and Baker did not connect whatsoever. Hopefully Sam Darnold will be able to revive him. He was pretty good with Darnold last year, so he had a ton of targets, a ton of yards, just never really gets the touchdowns. He only needs one more to tie his last 3 seasons, so there's that. He's got 6 games left to go. But yeah, I think this is going to be one of the games where DJ Moore kind of shows us what his talent is, and we get to have the never-ending DJ Moore conversation yet again. So what do you think about those guys? And then let me know what your guys are.
I like the first 2 with Geno and Conklin. Like Gino especially has been very consistent this year. I mean, he's a top quarter. I swear he's probably in the top 10.
Let me see here. Let me see. 7.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so like
he's been so consistent.
he's been extremely solid.
Like here,
And
okay, real quick, just to illustrate that, right? Here's his last 8 games. 19, 20, 19, 13, 13, 24, 32, 19, and then 6 and 17. Like he has one game sub 10 points. And the other games were his down games were against decent defenses, but it's just, man, he's been so good.
absolutely. And then for Conklin, I mean, like as long as it's not Zach Wilson throwing him the ball, I think he's going to be fine. I think honestly in that game, like you could probably start your Garrett Wilsons. You could potentially in a pinch maybe even start Elijah Moore. So
I was kind of thinking about it a little bit.
I know it's really tempting. It's really terrifying to do that, but I think this Jets offense can actually be something at least decent, as long as they don't have Zach Wilson trying to throw the ball to somebody.
And
so, and
real quick too. So with the Jets thing, like I do really feel bad for Zach Wilson. Like honestly, I feel really bad for him. He did not deserve this. Like I get it, he's not playing well, but look at the defenses that he's played since he's came back from injury. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the Miami Dolphins, which the Dolphins they have the talent there. You know, it's just whether or not they can put it all together week to week. Green Bay Packers, not the best defense ever, but their secondary is still really freaking good, and it was back in week 6 too. The Denver Broncos, top 5 defense. New England Patriots, top 5 defense. Buffalo Bills, no joke there. And then the New England Patriots again. Like he has played a murderer's row of defenses, and people are like, "Why has he been bad?" Like they bench him for Chicago, man. They benched him for Chicago.
I know, which is I think they just want to win that game and they want to try to make sure.
I get it, but like, here's the thing: you should bench him if he's bad against Chicago. That's when you bench him. If he's bad against Chicago, pull him. But, like he's played some of the toughest defenses. His last month of games is just. Give the guy a break.
It's been tough, but. I think that Robert Saleh is trying to send a message to his locker room and try not to lose the locker room because they do not like Zach Wilson.
Maybe. I don't know. Like we don't really know what's going on inside the locker room. You know what I mean? Like the problem with this team is they're all so young offensively. They need to shut the hell up sometimes too. Like you can't be airing all your dirty laundry to the media non-stop. That is creating a negative environment in there. But whatever.
Well, I agree with that, but I mean, you're kind of going off of what Garrett Wilson said Sunday, but
Garrett Wilson's a rookie. He should not be talking as much about.
But it's the problem with Garrett Wilson is that he's played with better quarterbacks than Zach Wilson
in college, though. You haven't done it in the NFL. You haven't done it with anybody in the NFL, though.
But he's played, but he can play well. Enough with
all these guys can play well, but that's the thing. Like you can't just put it all on Zach Wilson. Like Garrett Wilson is no proven stud. Same with Elijah Moore. You know, same with Corey Davis. Like Corey Davis is injured right now. He's not even playing right now. But like Denzel Mims, all these guys have a lot of talent, but none of them have proven it on the field. They're all young and they need to prove it. And like I get it, it's probably more Zach Wilson than it is these guys. I like the talent of these guys.
That's the same as Zach Wilson.
Yes, but that's the thing. Like you cannot be. That's going out there and complaining too much. You know what I mean? Like shut up and keep it in the locker room a little bit. You know, that's that young mentality. That's the new wave mentality.
Well, the last thing I will say about Zach Wilson is that I think he needs to take accountability for.
I agree.
How bad he has played, and he hasn't done that. And that's why he got benched, in my opinion.
I agree.
So
I do agree with that, but yeah. So that's enough on the Jets. So, I do find it frustrating. Like if he's bad against Chicago, that's when you bench him, man. Like not against the Patriots, but whatever.
I agree. But and then on DJ Moore, I think the biggest thing is that I think it's going to be a low scoring game, and I don't think Sam Darnold's going to do anything. I mean, he probably will get the ball to DJ Moore and DJ Moore only, but I don't know how well that will go against a
I
really
think he's gonna.
stout.
I think he's gonna just throw it up on a wing and a prayer, and that's where it's gonna be most of his.
And be hoping and praying. Yeah,
Yep.
I agree.
Yeah, that's gonna be a very frustrating game.
It's gonna
neither
be
offense is functional whatsoever, and both defenses are lockdown defenses.
Very quick game. Absolutely.
I would agree.
So to keep going, so for my starts of the week, I have Jeff Wilson on the Miami Dolphins going against a really, really bad Houston Texans defense. They are just bad. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, I will start running backs against that team. I don't care how bad they do the week before.
Dude, I don't know. I started Brian Robinson last week, and
I did too. I did too, and I was wrong as well. But like as a team, like
I know.
Like the Commanders ran for about 150 anyways. So
yeah, I know. It was crazy.
I'm not feeling so bad with that, and the Miami team is favored by 13. They're probably going to run a lot, and I think it's going to be a lot through Jeff Wilson. And he's probably going to rack up probably 120 yards, maybe a touchdown here or there. So, I'm feeling pretty good. He's going to have probably a low-end RB1, probably RB2 game, honestly, there. So, and then my second one is going to be Rachaad White. He's the running back for the Bucs, who's going to be replacing a good old playoff Lenny there.
Maybe.
And they're playing another poor defense in the Cleveland Browns, who just bleed yards on the ground. Like they are horrific. Like the Bills ran on them.
Yeah.
The Buffalo Bills ran on them.
Yep.
And the Bills don't run the ball.
Dude, people have been running on the Browns all year. It's been rough.
All year. It's been wild. So, and then White's last game, like I think he ran for like 106 against the Seahawks. I mean, that was overseas, and that was him kind of coming in. I mean, I think he's going to have another good game. He's going to get a lot of carries with Fournette kind of being in and out. So, having that hit pointer for him is probably going to keep him on a snap count, stuff like that. So, so I expect White to have another good game, a solid game, and I really hope he finds ends.
Yep. And who's number 3? And
then my last guy is Paris Campbell. He is going against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday night. I'm a little worried about this one, but I'm just going to go out on a limb with Paris, because him and Matt Ryan just know how to go and catch the ball together.
Yeah.
I mean, like last week wasn't as great as it could have been. I mean, I think he had a top. I think it was like RB 30 or wide receiver. I think 32. But
yeah, he wasn't great. Before, but the one thing I will say about last week,
it wasn't great. It was solid.
Last week they played Philly, first off, so there's that. Yes. I mean, Philly's defense is much better than Pittsburgh's, but
it's very stout.
His stat line actually wasn't that bad. 5 of 6 for 67 yards. Like, it's not very amazing, solid. Not very bad. Solid. But the one incompletion was actually a catch that was like knocked out after completing the catch. That was a fumble, but they just ruled it not a completion. So like it would have been a fumble, out of bounds. But so you would have lost like a point or something for that. But it was actually a catch. So he would have been 6 for 6 for like 75. So I mean, that's kind of his floor with Matt Ryan. So I really like Paris a lot. So, no, I do like those guys quite a bit. I was joking with Dale before the podcast started when we were talking through our starts of the week and everything. And I was like, I almost picked literally all 3 of those guys. So, so I do like them quite a bit. So we'll see what they can do this week. But, yeah, there's a lot of potential there for these guys for sure. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about here is a few guys that so we're going into week 12. A lot of teams, for Dynasty at least, their trade deadline is week number 12 or 13. Some teams push it back after the additional week there to 14. But, week 12, week 13, that's kind of the traditional Dynasty trade window, right? That's when it locks for the end of the year. And first off, before we get into that, I will say one of the best things that I've ever done in a league is no trade deadlines. And trade deadlines, I get why people like them, but at the same time, and I'm going to talk about this every single year just because it's more fun and it helps the league when there's no trade deadline. And you're going to say, oh, well, no, but then people can just go sell out and win a title. One, you're not guaranteed to win. You could add all these players by in the playoffs. You could be going into the championship game and they all get COVID or the flu or something and they don't play in the game. You have no idea what's going to happen, first off. Second off, not every player is guaranteed to boom. Like, players have bad weeks all the time, right? So if you're buying all these players and you're giving up a lot of future assets and everything for these players, because if you're buying players in a championship game, you're paying a premium for those guys, right? You're not getting them for value. You're overpaying to win the week, to win the title. So you're helping those guys that you're buying them from. So you're taking from the top, the league winner, to help the other guys that aren't the league winner. So it just creates more parity in the league. So no trade deadline is the best thing you could possibly do for the health of your league. But again, the counter argument is just fear, right? Well, he's going to sell out to win the title. Then you sell out to win the title. Well, I don't want to. Well, that's your choice. Like, I always hate those decisions that are just based on fear. Like, if you care that much, like the same with tanking. The only reason why people hate tanking is because they are afraid they won't get the number 1 overall pick. You can tank too. It's not no one's stopping you. Like, I just don't understand how people want to improve their team. I just don't get it. So that said, most leagues still have a trade deadline, and it's just so much less fun. But
no, and I agree with all what you're saying. And I think for the big thing for like a lot of leagues, like they just don't want it's collusion and stuff like that.
I mean, if there's collusion, so you should get a new league. Like you can't be colluding in Dynasty.
I agree.
Right?
I agree with that. I agree.
If you're selling out for Jonathan Taylor to go win your Week 17 championship game, you're not paying like 1 first and a second for Jonathan Taylor. You're paying like 3 firsts for him. It's like you're charging an upcharge just because the guy wants to win a title. So it's not like, oh, in week 12, week 13, people are they're not even sure if they're going to make playoffs at this point, right? Like people don't want to pay a premium for guys if they miss playoffs. That's the whole thing, right? Like, if you don't know if you're going to make playoffs, you're not going to pay 3 firsts for Jonathan Taylor, right? You're going to say, well, he's worth 2 firsts. I'll give you 2 firsts for him. It's like, but if you're in the playoffs, you're willing to pay more just to make sure that you can continue on to win the league, right? That's where those extra picks matter a little bit less if you have a better odds of winning, right? So that's what I hate trade deadlines. But that said, here are a few players before the trade deadline that you can go target if you're not a playoff team. So that's the other half of this, right? There's a lot of teams that are kind of in the middle where they want to make a playoff push. And that's one thing. Those guys are great to target as well right now. If you're a rebuilding team and you kind of want to sell some older assets, Keenan Allen, Allen Robinson, those type of guys. Those guys in the middle, those are the best guys to try and target right now to make sure that they can make the playoffs. But if you're a team that you're pretty sure you're not making playoffs or you're a rebuilding team, one thing that you could go and do right now is add some of these guys because they're not really contributing much for fantasy this year anyway. And if you can buy them now while their buy window is pretty open, their value is lower than what it normally would be, then now is the best time to do that because after the season ends, that's when people start to go into dynasty mode where, okay, what's next season going to be like? What's this off season going to be looking like? How are the free agents and the draft picks and all that stuff? So buying them in at the end of the season now is the cheapest that these guys will ever be again. So the first off, we'll touch on one quarterback here, and it's a pretty obvious one probably. Trey Lance is the guy. I love Trey Lance still. I think that what we've seen from this San Francisco offense is you get a playmaker in here, and it's going to be so good at quarterback. Jimmy
Absolutely.
Garoppolo is not the future of this team, and Trey Lance, I think he has all the potential in the world. Oh, but he didn't do anything this year. I get it, but he broke his leg. Like, come on, let's be realistic here. I think that
I mean, on a note on Lance, like I do think it'd be really interesting to see what they do if like Jimmy G is able to lead them to a Super Bowl and what they do with him. I think
they
that's going to
can't do
be a
anything with him
very
though. That's the
I
thing.
know it's going to be very interesting.
He has a no trade, no franchise tag clause in his contract. So he's done after this year. The best they can do is just offer him $1 million. You know, like $1 million
Right.
is nothing for these guys. $1 billion, let's say it that way. A massive contract to get him to come back and play for them again.
Right.
So actually, you know, I was actually thinking about this a little bit, right? If you are the Niners, right? One thing that I think that they could do, and I would not be surprised by this, and this is kind of a low key, I'm just thinking about this a little bit out loud, but sending Trey Lance to the Baltimore Ravens for Lamar Jackson. You'd probably have to add like a pick on top of it, but not a ton.
Yep.
Not a ton. Trey Lance is
No,
cheap.
I
He's only gone through 2 years of his rookie contract. Lamar once paid. Similar skill sets. Lamar's more proven. I think Kyle Shanahan could use more from that. Like, I was just thinking about it. It would not be the worst, craziest trade in the world.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I can honestly see like the Giants trying to trade for Lamar
Yeah.
and trying to get him. You know, I could see that. I think that's more likely than the Niners getting off of Lance.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what they end up doing. Like, there's going to be teams that need a quarterback still next year. And there's a few guys out there, you know, Derek Carr's, some of these other guys. But, I mean, yeah, I would not be shocked if the Niners decided to move on from Trey Lance. That's all I'm saying. So we'll see what happens, but I hope he doesn't lose his job because of injury. I still believe in Trey Lance quite a bit. The talent is definitely there. But yeah, we're just going to have to see what happens next year in the offseason. I think they're committed to him. I agree, but I just wouldn't be shocked if they moved on from him. That's all I'm saying. But from a trade candidate standpoint, Trey Lance is definitely the best buy at quarterback. Young, talented, unproven, so people are a little bit more skittish on him. And you know, the other guy I was thinking about a little bit was also Kenny Pickett. Just an honorable mention for Kenny Pickett here. Yep. I was not a Kenny Pickett fan. I'm still not really the biggest fan, but he's actually been pretty good this year throughout the last couple games that he's played. He does have a little bit of a rushing baseline, not a massive floor, but, you know, the last 2 games, ever since the bye against decent defenses, New Orleans and Cincinnati, 16 points and 19 points. It's not terrible. Not terrible at all. So, you know, give him another year, rebuild this offensive line a little bit more. Kenny Pickett could be kind of scary next year. So just an honorable mention there on him. All right. So one of the bigger tiers here of players, I guess you want to talk about the bigger tiers. You just want to hit tight end real quick and just do our one off of that position as well.
I think we should just hit tight end and just get it done and over with because it's only one man.
All right. So we were looking at the vast array of tight ends out there. And honestly, the best buy right now for both of us, we agreed, was the Pat Freiermuth tight end for Kenny Pickett, who we just talked on there. Pat Freiermuth has been somebody that's been getting much more heavily involved the last couple games. His last 4 games, he has 12 targets, 7 targets, 7 targets, and 9 targets. 8, 4, 4, and 8 in terms of catches. He's getting more comfortable with Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett's going to him in more situations, more high-stress situations, which is great. They don't have Chase Claypool. I mean, it's not really a coincidence that the trade of Chase Claypool has opened up Pat Freiermuth a little bit more as well. And honestly, I think that the offensive line needs are so big for this team. The Steelers are not going to be using that high pick on, you know, a skill player. Maybe defense, depending on where their pick is in that draft. Their defense definitely needs some talent there as well. But I think that it's going to be a very heavily focused defensive and offensive line draft for the Steelers, and that's where they're going to spend a lot of stuff. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of competition added to this team with Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and then Pat Freiermuth as the top 3 guys for this team. So I like Pat Freiermuth a lot. I think that he's kind of cheap because he hasn't really done a ton this year, and he's someone that's definitely starting to see an uptick in usage as we go along here.
Yeah. And then one note on Pat is that unfortunately, like, he has had some injuries. I mean, I wouldn't call him injury prone, but he's had like a couple concussions this year. So, like, that's something to be mindful of. I mean, especially in his longevity, especially.
Sure.
So I mean,
I don't know.
can see him being
The one thing with concussions, I would say, is like Devontae Adams had a concussion like every year for 4 straight years, but then he hasn't had one in like 2 years. So it's like,
right.
Some guys, it's just unlucky. They get dinged.
Absolutely.
And concussions specifically are one of those ones where you just can't predict it, and it's not something that's repeatable. It's not like a hamstring that they hurt all the time. Kadarius Toney, he's got the world's weakest hamstrings in the world. He needs to, I don't know, drink more milk. I don't know, whatever he needs to do.
They are tight. I guess. I don't know what's going on with him.
It's like a piano that's just tuned too tightly. Every time you hit a key, it just snaps. That's what Kadarius Toney's career is. But yeah, it's just, Pat Freiermuth, he missed a game, basically a game and a half this year. But yeah, like you said, I'm not too worried about it long term. He is only 24 years old, so there's that piece of it as well. But great buy candidate right there. All right, running backs, we will go to those guys now. A little bit bigger tier here. The best buys on our list, and we'll just roll through them here and give our thoughts on them real quick. So Javonte Williams, Khalil Herbert, J.K. Dobbins, and Isaiah Spiller. So real quick at the top, Javonte's pretty obvious. The talent's there. He jumped up to RB number 4 in Dynasty rankings this offseason. People were all over Javonte, and he went down, and the Denver Broncos have kind of gone to hell. Their team just looks terrible, but yeah, it's just he didn't have the best year as well. This year, the best start. They were splitting it pretty heavily between him and Melvin Gordon. Now Melvin Gordon's a free agent, and it's been a nightmare for them. But yeah, I think Javonte's definitely got all the talent. The biggest downside with Javonte Williams is just he tore his ACL, and he had an LCL tear in there as well. Same thing as J.K. Dobbins. Timeline-wise, it's basically the same as J.K. Dobbins. I think J.K. actually tore his earlier. His was in the preseason of that year, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, it was in the preseason.
And he's still not back, right? So, Gus Edwards is... Gus Edwards is basically the best look at what Javonte Williams' timeline of return is for next season. So we're probably not looking at Javonte being healthy until probably week 10, 11, right around this time next year. So you're a whole year away from Javonte, but he's 22 years old. So, an extra half season, if you can get him for a good value. We talked about it on an episode a couple weeks ago. There are so many running backs that are going to be transitioning out of the NFL in the next couple years. Javonte is going to be a staple of the top 24 probably for, the next 3 to 4 years, even missing half of next year. So he's someone that if you can get him for a good discount right now, I'd be all in on Javonte. What are your thoughts on him?
Absolutely. Oh, no, I completely agree with that. And, this Broncos offense has just been weird and horrible, and I don't know what's going on with it, but I think they're missing the key piece in the running back, and that's really what, like, Wilson's had is a pretty solid running back, like whether it was with Carson, Lynch, having that key guy is what makes that offense run. So, I really expect him to not really share a lot of carries like he did in the beginning. His timeline will be like what you said, probably like week 10. Like they'll probably have him for hopefully a playoff run next year. Is going to be their goal, but I would definitely go after him, and he won't be super cheap, but he's going to be cheaper than like your Breece Halls and and stuff like that, especially.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, and I was just looking back here. So, Denver, to start the season, they went up to Seattle. Tough game there, but they were actually moving the ball in
Mhm.
that one. If you remember, they just could
Yep.
not get in the end zone, which is kind of still the problem. But they had
Yes.
so many goal. They were moving the ball so much better. Week 2 against Houston, same thing. But, after Javante went down, that's when this offense really started to struggle. And they have not been able to replace him on the ground. They just have not been able to get a consistent run game going. And I think that this offense kind of needs it a little bit more than we realize. And that might be part of the reason why they're struggling right now. So Javante, definitely has a role on this team. And again,
Mhm.
should be a staple of the top 24 guys going forward.
Absolutely.
All right, next guy was Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert is a little bit easier for me. I love Khalil Herbert. I really, really like the talent of this kid. And David Montgomery is going to be a free agent next year. Meanwhile, Khalil Herbert is going to be the only guy. And, there's the argument, oh, well, they can bring in another guy. But he was really stinking good with David Montgomery, So that's the
Agreed.
one thing.
Agreed.
I don't know if it really matters that much. And this is on a bad Bears team. Like, the Bears are the worst that they're going to be for the next couple of years right now. They're only going to get better. They have so much money in salary cap next year. They're going to bring in a lot of talent, skill players. They've got high picks in the draft. They've got multiple picks in the top 3 rounds now because of all the trades they've done. I think they have 6 picks now in the top 3 rounds. So, they've really I think they only have 1 first, but they have 5 between 2 and 3. So, they're just loading up to take more shots in the actual NFL draft. And I really like that for the Bears. And this is, again, the worst that they're going to be for a while. They're going to retool the offensive line, bring in some skill guys, and then rebuild that defense. So Khalil Herbert, they might bring in another guy to compete with him, but this team is so good on the ground. And if he's been able to do this with competition from David Montgomery, who is a good running back as it is, I'm not worried about that whatsoever.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I agree with that to an extent. I guess I should say. I mean, I I can see him being the top back next year, but I can still see them having somebody kind of like spell him for a little bit. But
Sure.
I mean, I don't think that's going to decrease his fantasy value at all.
No, I don't think so. And again, we're talking about Khalil Herbert as a staple top 24 guy. I don't think that he's going to be a top 12 guy. There's the potential. He might get up to
Oh
like
no.
13, 14, somewhere in that range, but I
Right.
don't think he ever has top 12 potential for a full season. But, I think that he's someone that is pretty cheap right now because of the injury, the IR, out for the rest of the year, that we could definitely see something from him going forward. And this is the best time, again, to buy all these guys. Number 3 guy, J.K. Dobbins, kind of similar to Javante. If you remember a year ago, people were so high on J.K. Dobbins. Tears his ACL in preseason, had to go a whole year without him. Comes back, isn't really the same. Has the hamstring injury, I believe, gets put on IR for a couple weeks here and is almost back, I believe. He should be back any time now. Have they activated him yet? I haven't looked. I was trying to find his player card here. Talk for me real quick, Dale. Dale?
Yeah, it's Dobbins. I really like Dobbins. I've really liked him the whole time. I mean, I'm a homer, obviously, but I think the biggest thing I'm worried about is his knee and the stability of that. I mean, for him, like he had a pretty nasty knee injury. I mean, I would almost compare it to like Teddy Bridgewater. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say as bad, but pretty close. Like he tore a lot of ligaments in his knee.
Yeah.
But I'm I mean if I would be a little bit weary. I mean I I'm not sure if it's going to help him or hurt him if Lamar's not. I'm not really sure which end that's going to be because like it depends who the quarterback's going to be on that
Mm-hmm.
team and
Trey Lance.
I Trey Lance, yeah, maybe maybe or it could be Daniel Jones, who knows. But
Hey, he's been
but
okay for
still,
his running backs.
I know, I know. I agree with that, but I really like Dobbins. I feel he's a better pass catcher than what he gets credit for.
I think
You know,
I think what's going to end up happening. Here's my honest prediction of what's going to happen with Baltimore at the end of this year. I think that they're going to franchise tag Lamar Jackson. Whether or not he plays on the franchise tag, to be determined. I think that they'll try and sign him to a long-term contract. Ultimately, a deal will probably get done between them and Lamar. They're going to fire Greg Roman. His offense has become stale.
yeah,
They have not been able to move the ball as well at
absolutely,
all year.
absolutely.
And Greg Roman is kind of the track record of his career as an offensive coordinator.
Mhm.
He's very creative, and then it gets stale. And he has never had a good passing offense. He cannot scheme it up to save his life. He's very good at creating a run game in the first couple years, but his innovativeness is just non-existent. So I think that they're going to try and get Lamar Jackson to stay by firing Greg Roman, letting him pick an offensive coordinator to come in and kind of work with him on the offensive side of the ball. That's going to be one of their, their deals in his contract, that he gets to kind of pick the guy that he works with. So that's my honest prediction of what's going to happen. Now, that said, if they do kind of do that, if they go away from Greg Roman, I think that J.K. Dobbins actually gets opened up a lot more. This offense has always been good at running the ball. It's not John Harbaugh.
Yeah, it's John.
It's never been his forte to really Justin Forsett. But just reminded me of that guy. But he's never been a workhorse kind of guy like a Mike Tomlin, right? But he's always been a committee kind of guy. But they've been useful in the past. And I think J.K. Dobbins, again, like you said, he has pass-catching chops. He's just not been asked to do it. But Lamar just doesn't dump it all. Like, Lamar just has not been a good passer for the last couple of years just because, again, I think it's offensive-based. But, J.K. Dobbins' rookie year, he had 24 targets, 18 catches, and he was fine. So, I just think that there's definitely some room there. And J.K. Dobbins is going into the final year of his contract next year. So worst case scenario, he's 24 years old next year, and then he'll be a free agent. It's kind of the Saquon Barkley type of treatment. So J.K. Dobbins is someone that I'm liking long term. I think that he's probably pretty cheap right now. Haven't sent off too many feelers for him in any leagues. Just because of the IR stint that he's doing right now. He's not going to return until week 14 probably this season. So, that's playoff time when all these guys really need these players for crunch time. So you're not going to be able to see him too much there. Anything else on Dobbins?
It's with him. I do agree with you saying, I kind of hope he gets more opened up next year, and I think it would be better for him to maybe cut it down this year, honestly, to get fully healthy and then to have a better year next year.
Hopefully, but unlike our fantasy championships, their actual playoff push is going to be during our fantasy championship. So Baltimore is still in the hunt. So, maybe they bring him back and maybe he can be healthy finally. Like Gus Edwards waited an extra couple weeks to come back and looked way better, So I think Dobbins just tried to rush it back too quickly. Got injured a little bit. It was a small thing. It was just the hamstring. So, we'll see what happens. But, he had the knee scope. That's what it was. So they cleaned up his knee a little bit more. And, I think that he'll be fine. Those arthroscopic knee surgeries are pretty routine, nothing to freak out about too much there. So J.K. Dobbins is another buy. Last guy here for running back, and we'll start to pick it up a little bit on the wide receivers, but Isaiah Spiller, he's someone that I just really like. I think that he's got a lot of potential going forward. The running back for the Los Angeles Chargers, he's really starting to get utilized a lot more the last couple of weeks for the Chargers. Nothing crazy so far in terms of usage, but it is interesting just to see that he has become the primary backup for Austin Eckler, and everybody knows Austin Eckler, amazing player, but he'll be 28 this year, and that means next year he'll be going into his age 29 season. He's in great shape. Don't get me wrong. Running backs are starting to, really push the limits on that running back cliff that we've known about for years. But his time is coming. Time comes for everyone. It is undefeated in the NFL. Nobody except Tom Brady can outrun
Absolutely.
Father Time. So Isaiah Spiller, he is the next guy up. He is very talented. If you go back to his days in Texas A&M, he's just really, really good. And there was a reason why he was talked about as one of the best backs before his combine. The combine dropped him. And then his draft position, he was a 4th round pick. Draft Twitter, they're gonna kill you if you take a 4th round running back. But, at the same time, we talk about it all the time. All these teams, you don't take a 1st round running back, okay? But now they're starting to take them in 3 and 4 a lot more. Oh, but 4 is dead zone. It's like, we don't have the data for this, man. We just shut up about this stuff. We don't have the data. Isaiah Spiller has a lot of potential going forward, and he's starting to get utilized. He was injured to start the season. In week 7, he got 6% of snaps after the bye. Last 3 weeks, 19, 17, 25. Again, it's nothing crazy, but they're using him more and more as the season goes on. I think that he's going to get more heavily involved. He's 6'1", 215, 21 years old. So there's a lot of future ahead for Isaiah Spiller. Again, with Austin Eckler definitely aging out as well. What are your thoughts on Spiller?
No, I 100% agree on that. And then I was just checking on Sport Track, and for Eckler's going to be a free agent in the 2024 season. So like he's under contract for this year and next. So, I can expect I would hope for the transition from Eckler to Spiller is going to happen.
Probably next season then, right?
It's probably going to happen next season where
50, like 60, 40, 70, 30, somewhere in there.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to happen slowly, but I think by towards the end of the year that he's going to be the lead back there, and with Justin Herbert not having any time to throw the ball, he's just going to dump it off to Spiller left and right like he does to Austin Eckler. You know?
Spiller does have good hands, man. That's one thing, like, in a PPR league with running backs who can catch, like, I get it. Yeah. Isaiah Spiller wasn't the fastest running back. Cooper Kupp ran a 4.6 at his pro day. Like, what are we talking about here? Cooper Kupp's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL still. In his age 30 season, he's still one of the best. But Isaiah Spiller didn't he ran a 4.5 as a running back. Like, who cares, man? Who cares? Lev Bell ran like a 4.8. Like, nobody cares. If you can do something with it, it does not matter. So I like Isaiah Spiller, but that's enough about him. We'll run on to these wide receivers real quick. We'll finish it off there, and then we'll finish with an ERI recap for the last 2 weeks. That'll be pretty brief at the end here. All right, so the wide receivers we're going to talk about ranked kind of in terms of importance. The most blatantly obvious one is Bateman, Rashad Bateman at the top there. Jerry Jeudy, number 2. Jahan Dotson, number 3. Romeo Doubs, Dips, whatever you want to call him, with the Green Bay Packers is number 4. And then the last one we wanted to just touch on a smidgen here is John Mechie with the Houston Texans. And he's the rookie that hasn't played at all. He got leukemia, and we can just touch on him first real quick, just as a brief note on him. Very good Alabama wide receiver, gets drafted, I think, in the 3rd round by the Houston Texans. Finds out he has leukemia before, I think it was even before OTAs this offseason. Like, he found out real early.
I think so, yeah.
And it's not it's not the old school leukemia. I don't really know much about leukemia. I'm not going to lie to you, but it's treatable. I do know that. It's kind of like a cancer almost, but it once you treat it, it's gone forever, I guess. I don't know a ton about it, but
sure. Yeah,
I believe once he gets it treated, it's done. Like, it's not a long-term thing. He can get it treated, and he'll be fine moving forward. Now, what that does to his body and all that stuff, I don't know, but he was a very good wide receiver. I think he was like a 4-star recruit for Alabama, and he was a 3rd-round pick. They invested a lot. Brandon Cooks, we've seen all the drama with him this last offseason. They're going to probably bring in another guy this next year. They've got 2 top 10 picks right now. I don't think they'll both be on the offensive side, but, a top 2nd-round pick maybe on a wide receiver just to fill out this. Then you're looking at a wide receiver room of John Mechie, Nico Collins, and player X, whoever that may be from this year's draft class. Could be pretty interesting there. So A lot of potential long term, but the leukemia piece, you could probably get John Mechie for like a 4th round pick right now. That's the only reason why we're kind of talking on him. And if you're in full rebuild, what are you going to use a 4th round pick on an unknown guy in anyway, right? Maybe take a shot on this guy. We know this draft capital is a 3rd round pick at least. You don't have to wait until he gets back next year. You can kind of invest in him a little bit earlier is the thought behind that. Anything else on John Mechie?
No, I mean, I agree with all what you're saying. I think he's very exciting. So when he played in college, like he was the 2 to Jamison Williams. So I'm really excited about both of those guys.
Yep.
And obviously John Mechie's the lesser one, or the lesser known one, and he's gonna be a lot cheaper.
Right. Yep. So, I agree with you. All right, so the other 4 guys, Bateman, Judy, Dotson, and Dobbs. So Dotson's a rookie, been injured a lot this year. I think that, he had the hype. He was the number 15 overall pick this last year by the Commanders. A little bit of an issue there offensively with the quarterback, but they're probably going to try and bring in another guy next year. One of these days, they're going to be able to get a quarterback long term. But he's someone that's just kind of interesting. I think that he was going kind of around the end of the 1st in most rookie drafts this last offseason, high 2nd. The reason why I mentioned him here, I think he's actually probably decreased in value a tiny bit this offseason because he hasn't really played. He hasn't been able to do much on the field. He's been okay when he has played, but the quarterback situation has been a little up and down there as well. But if you can get him for a mid-2nd, which is probably what it would take to get him right now, it feels about right. So it's actually cheaper than what you would have paid this last offseason. And I think that, once you get to the mid-2nd, again, I know that the 2023 draft class is so highly touted and everything, but it's really thin on wide receiver. It's got some elite guys at the top and not a ton of depth that you love. And, running backs in the 2nd round, after like 5-6 guys at running back, I really don't know if we're going to trust that many running backs to come in and be fantasy contributors right away. So I think it's worth a stab. I do like Jahan Dotson quite a bit from that aspect. And, he's less of a gamble than some of the mid-2nds you're going to see in this upcoming draft.
Agreed. No, I definitely agree with that. And, I do expect the Commanders to not have Carson Wentz or Taylor Heineke on their starting at least. So, I think that's going to help out quite a bit. So, and for Dotson, having Curtis Samuel there and having Terry McLaurin, like for him, like he doesn't have to be the number 1 guy that he was at Penn State. I mean he can be more of the slot guy and do a lot of those things that he does well. Like he's a really good route runner, and out of some of these guys that we're going to mention, yeah, and he does have a nose for the end zone. And out of the guys you've mentioned, I have him more up my list than probably a lot of other.
Sure. Romeo Dobbs, he's another guy that is very interesting. So if, and I think we've mentioned this a little bit before, Christian Watson breaking out has really kind of changed this offense a lot. And we'll see what it means going forward, because we really haven't seen all these guys on the field at the same time, him, Lazard, and Watson. But Romeo Dobbs is interesting because if for some reason, and I put it like 50-50 at this point in time, Aaron Rodgers was on Pat McAfee earlier this week talking about post-NFL life and retirement and what it would be for him. Like, it is very forefront in his mind. The dude is not enjoying football right now. He's not having a good time. Didn't they just lose to the Tennessee Titans too? They lost that game, right?
Yes, they did.
I was at my leadership conference, so I don't remember exactly the end of that game. But yeah, they are not having a good time in Green Bay. And if Aaron Rodgers does retire, he has a $98 million dead cap that he leaves the Packers with, which honestly, I would not be surprised if he did it as a final screw you to the Packers. Honestly, like just knowing Aaron Rodgers' personality, It just would not surprise me. We'll just put it that way. So if that happens, they're going to be shedding players like crazy. Lazard will be gone. Sammy Watkins will be gone. It will be a wide receiver room of basically Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. That's going to be the only guys on this team, with Jordan Love probably as the starting quarterback. It's going to be a nightmare for the Packers if that happens. So I think that there's a lot of potential there for Doubs going forward. And we've also seen some flashes for him anyway this season as we've gone through these weeks. He's been a little hit or miss. But again, it's the Packers. Their whole offense has been broken most of the season except for a couple weeks ago. So I think that there's a lot of potential there. And I think that there's a little bit of beef there too between Doubs and Rodgers because he's not the most reliable guy in terms of catching the ball. But, you get him with someone like Jordan Love or one of these other guys, there's a lot of potential for Doubs moving forward.
No, I agree with that. And, I can see him being the two in this offense, after the debacle of an off season that they're going to have. I have a feeling like you, it's going to get really, really messy in Green Bay. It's going to get really bad for them, and I don't know which way it's going to go, but it's not going to be right.
Yep, I'm with you. All right, the last two we'll just hit on real quickly here. So Jerry Jeudy, basically the reason why he's interesting to me, I think that he's not going to be on the Denver Broncos next year. I think that he's going to be the one that they end up moving. There was all the trade rumors about him going to the Giants anyway this year, and he's the only one that hasn't gotten paid recently, actually, of all these guys. Yep. He's a young player, so there's that, but I think that they're not going to want to pay him, first off. Second off, I don't think he fits in with the mentality of the Denver Broncos. And I think that they're going to try and move on from him next offseason. They're going to try and trade him. They're going to do like an A.J. Brown or something with him, recap like a late first or a second-round pick for him, something like that, and move on. Then they're going to use that pick, and they're going to take a wide receiver that Russell Wilson handpicks from the draft to kind of try and appease him next offseason. This is my prediction for this and how it's going to go. So Jerry Jeudy, he's someone that is extremely talented. Again, another Bama guy. Has not been able to get it together with the Denver Broncos. Just has not been able to do it. His yards per catch, though, is elite. He's in the green every single week in yards per catch. But
it's the big thing with him is that he has so many drops, and he's in. And there's been a lot of drops. There's been a lot of. I mean, the quarterback play last year with Drew Lock was atrocious, which that probably didn't help his situation, but. It's for coming into the league. He was more known as a sure-handed receiver, and then now, and then now once he's in the league, he's kind of had the opposite going on, which I think is I'm a little worried about that part. And,
I don't know.
I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about it, but I really think a change of scenery would.
That's what I'm kind of thinking as well. I just, this year it's been hard to evaluate anything because his whole offense sucks so bad, So yes. That's the problem. His yards per target is terrible, but his yards per catch is always in the green, which what that tells you is he is making a lot of moves. You get the ball in his hands, and he is breaking away with a lot of these runs. So you just got to get the ball in his hands, and he's fine, right? That's what that's telling me. But, I think that a change of scenery would be good for him. We'll see what he can do to finish out the year. He is missing right now. I don't think he's on IR right now, but no, he's not. But he has the ankle injury, the high ankle, basically mid-ankle sprain or whatever. He'll probably miss this week and then start next week if I had to predict. But yeah, he's someone that's kind of interesting. And then the last guy, Rashad Bateman. Obviously, we just talked about what Lamar Jackson. My prediction is they're going to move on from Greg Roman, who is just not a capable, wide receiver pass game or coordinator, right? Like, he just cannot create a good passing scheme ever in any of his career. Like, go back to his time in San Francisco. It was a great run game, great running quarterback, all this stuff, but he just cannot scheme open the passing. And I think they're going to bring in somebody to work with Lamar, and it's going to open them up even more. And what we've liked about Mark Andrews and what we've liked about the potential of Rashad Bateman, Dobbins, even again, these guys that underneath, I think that they're going to be able to really focus on that next offseason if they aren't able to turn around this year and they do move on from Roman. So I think that there's a lot of potential there for Rashad Bateman. And again, no wide receivers really want to come play here as it is. So they're stuck with Bateman for another couple years. He was a first-round pick, too, if I remember right? Like 22, 21, somewhere in that range.
Yeah,
so,
around that.
So he's still got a couple more years on his contract, isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So Rashad Bateman, massive buy candidate right there. So that's our trade for targets right now. Let us know over on Twitter or on YouTube, or wherever you're listening to the podcast. If you can, while you're there, leave a comment, like, subscribe, thumbs up, whatever you are, Spotify, wherever you're listening to the podcast. Subscribe to the channel for more content. We're going to be putting out a lot more. I did miss last week. Again, that was my fault because of the work thing, but we're going to be really gearing up and ramping up content here after the season, after the actual playoffs, and early spring with a lot of the fun pieces of the Dynasty content, the rookies and the offseason. So that said, we are going to jump into just a quick recap of week number 10 and 11 for the ERI League. So this one, we're not going to go into too much depth on the actual players and things like that. We're just going to kind of touch on some of the scores here. So in week number 10, I actually ended up beating the Great Rebuild. It put me at 4-6 going into that week. Yep. Beat Ken. So it's hard to see what the actual records are of the teams because going back to week 10 doesn't tell me what the records are after the game. It tells me what their current records are. So Ken is 5-6, so I'm one game behind him at this point in time, but we'll go through that. So I ended up getting the win over Ken. Massive win for me in week number 10. Highest scorer on the week, which was great. It felt so good. It's been a long time since I've been the high scorer on the week, but Dan was number 2. Did lose Cooper Kupp, though, so that's going to be very detrimental to Dan moving forward. He's still pretty deep. He's still got Diggs, Jefferson, Tyreek. He's not hurting too much there, but yeah, it is a little bit of a blow, though. If you're going to get a blow, losing Cooper Kupp is the best blow we can give Dan going into the playoffs. He got the win over Braden in week number 10, which was a big upset because Braden was one of those teams I was really riding high last few weeks. Rob ended up pulling out the win over Max, which actually has big ramifications, kind of. Well, I guess it doesn't matter at all because Rob has Max's pick, and those two are the number 1 and number 2 teams in the draft right now in the lottery, so it didn't really matter too much. It still gives Rob the best chance, but it does hurt him in the later rounds of the rookie draft, I guess, there. Ryan lost to James, which was a huge upset. I needed Ryan to win this one, and then we'll touch on what he did last week. It was so frustrating because if he would have beaten James, I actually had a chance of. James had a very real chance of not making playoffs. He really, really did. But Ryan got the loss there against James, and James was able to pull it out. So, yeah, kind of stinks for me there. This one stunk because all the teams that I needed to lose won for my chance of getting to the playoffs. But Eric also got the win over Keelan. So Keelan and I are now tied, but we'll touch on that in week number 11. So Eric was a big win. He really needed to get that win over Keelan in week number 10. So then last week, jumping back to last week, Ryan lost to freaking James when I needed him to win and then just blows me out last week. Absolutely murders me, but I kind of expected this anyway. So my playoff chances are like 0% at this point in time. It's like 1%, I guess, to make playoffs. It's still there, I guess, but I don't even know if my team's any good now, even if I do make playoffs. But I have to get a win against either James or Dan in the next couple of weeks. I basically need to win out now to have a chance.
Yeah,
but
good luck.
Yeah, it's not great. So I got blown out by Ryan last week, which was not fun. 180 to 121, so it wasn't even close. I mean, his team just went nuclear too, dude. Jalen Hurts versus Justin Fields was fine, but then you got Derrick Henry, Devontae Adams, goodness, George Kittle even went off. Like, his kicker had 23 points. This is why kickers are dumb. The funny thing is, too, like, his kicker had 23 points. Dumb. I had Evan McPherson get 17, so it wasn't even like that much of a difference there. It could have been much worse if my kicker didn't perform, but frustrating. All right, the next one was a massive win. This one was huge. Eric got the win over Dan to really basically solidify himself a playoff slot. Because, again, Eric and James were the two teams that had the potential to fall out of playoffs. They both got a win this last week. James got the win over Max, and Eric got the win over Dan, which is a huge upset because Dan's team is just so monstrous. And this is what I've been saying for weeks, guys. Dan can lose. He has 2 losses on the season. Me and Eric are the ones that beat him. And it's not like we're the most impressive teams in the league, right? So anybody can have a good week. The trade deadline is next week, next Thursday, I believe. So, any of the other playoff teams, if you want to make any moves before the deadline, get them in now while you still can. All right, then Rob won over Keelan. This one was actually huge. I needed Rob to get this win, so it actually puts us at a 3-way tie. But, yeah, that was a big one. And then the other big win that I really needed was Braden beat Ken. So that gives us a final standings of Dan, number 1, 9-2. 2 losses. He's 1 game above James, but he's 2 games ahead of next team of number 3. So he's almost got the bye locked up right now. But 3 weeks left. Anything can happen. If he loses out, Braden wins out. It's possible that James and Braden could have the byes, but I'm not expecting that to happen. James is in number 2 at 8-3. Braden and Eric are now tied at 7-4, and that is huge. Like I said, 7 wins was the magic number that I can no longer kick anybody out. Like, if you get to 8 wins, you're locked for playoffs. I cannot catch anybody at that point in time. Ken can catch a couple people, but yeah, if I can get to 7 wins, by winning out, I can do it. But yeah, points wise, I don't think it's really much of a challenge between me and like Braden or Eric, but. Yeah, there's that. So Braden and Eric are now both 7-4. Braden's in 3rd place. Eric is in 4th place. Basically, knock on wood, locked for playoffs at this point in time, unless something absolutely crazy happens the last 3 weeks. Ryan is in 5th place at 6-5, which is great. Thank you for that, Ryan, for blowing me up and then being in 5th place. Ken is currently in 6th place at 5-6. So this is where it gets really interesting. Then there's a 3-way tie, 7, 8, and 9. Myself, Keelan, and Rob, all 4 and 7. Then Max has the number 1 locked up at 1 and 10. I don't even think he can lose the number 1 at all anymore. So the only way would be is if he won all the rest of his games. He'd have to go 3-0 to win the season because his points differential between him and Rob has scored 300 less points than Max, which is crazy to be 3 wins up on him. Like, that's wild, man. That is absolutely wild. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. The playoff race is getting very hot. If and real quick, I guess we can touch on it just to finish it out. But this week, I'm actually playing James. So, again, I have to get this win. I have to win out to have a chance to get playoffs. There is still a chance, but it's very, very slim. Braden plays Rob, which is, win for him probably. He's going to get to that magic number 8 where I can no longer catch him. Eric plays Max, which definitely should be a number 8 for him. Dan plays Ryan, which will be interesting. There is still a chance that Ryan doesn't make playoffs. If Ryan doesn't get to 7, I can catch him, but I'm not holding my breath on that one, but it is possible, I guess. But yeah, Dan plays Ryan. If he can pull out the win, he is favored by 2 points right now, so it's going to be a close one there. And then the other crazy one, this one is massive. This one is absolutely massive. Keelan plays Ken. Those guys are 1 game apart, and right now Ken is the 6th playoff team. So if Keelan wins, he could push Ken out and take that last playoff slot. If Keelan wins and I win, I think I pushed both of them out of the last playoff slot. So it's going to be real interesting as we get down to the final couple weeks. But next week, spoiler alert, I actually have Dan. So I'm not holding my breath just yet, but it is possible. It is possible. So anything else before we get out of here?
I think the biggest thing in this league is that you have a chance, and I was kind of hoping that they would give you some glimpse of a chance. And I think for next week that Dan is going to smash your dreams, and I am here for it.
I told him not to give me hope, man. I told him. I lost, dude. The injuries are just starting to pile up. I lost Pitts again today. IR. Yeah. He's done for the year. Goddard's on IR, so I forget who I'm starting to tight end this week. It's not great. Who was I starting? Who was Cade Otton? I don't even know if I'm doing Cade Otton. I think I might pivot, but I've got 3 tight ends on my bench, all on IR. It's not great, man. Gosh. This is not great at all. Oh goodness, we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's it'll be interesting to see how this goes. We'll see. But oh, wait a minute, Hunter Henry just got dropped. Ooh. Okay, he's bad. He's been terrible all year. Never mind. So, all right, thank you guys so much for listening. You can find the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen. You're listening to it wherever you're at now, but it's also available at these other places as well. If, like I said earlier, while you're there, if you could just leave a comment, subscription, thumbs up, whatever it is, just helps with the algorithm, gets it rolling a little bit more there. Anything you can do to help us, that would be great. Again, follow us on Twitter at TDC_Calvin or at Dynasty_Dale. Hit us up with any trade questions as we're going into the end of the season. And again, anybody that you're trying to get, hit us up and let us know. So thank you guys so much for listening. Have a good night.